Christmas Eve should have felt magical, but in my family, it always came wrapped in comparisons. That year, the tree sparkled with white lights, carols drifted faintly from the radio, and my parents sat side by side on the couch, faces glowing with the smug anticipation of gift-giving. I perched on the floor, cross-legged, a mug of lukewarm cocoa warming my hands, waiting for what I assumed would be another token present, something small and half thought out. I was not wrong. My mother leaned forward with a smile that curled just a little too tightly, holding out a book swaddled in shiny red paper. When I tore it open, the cover stared back at me. How to Grow Up. A cartoon woman in her 30s clutched a juice box and glitter wand while unpaid bills fluttered around her head like vultures. The subtitle was even more charming. Stop being a toddler in an adult body. My parents chuckled softly. This reminded us of you. My mom said the words as sweet as a candy cane, and just as sharp when the tip snaps in your mouth. I forced a smile because in my family, that was survival. Before I could even decide how insulted I was, my sister Amelia unwrapped a glossy envelope practically radiating importance. It was thick, cream-colored, the airline logo stamped proudly across the top. Barcelona. She gasped theatrically, one hand to her mouth, like she'd just won the lottery. My parents lit up, applauding themselves. We thought you deserved another opportunity to expand your international network. My dad declared, as if sending her on her third research trip of the year was some kind of diplomatic mission. This will help your career flourish, my mom added warmly. Then, almost as an afterthought, she turned toward me and tapped the book still heavy in my lap. And maybe this will help yours take off too. I laughed, or at least pretended to, because the alternatives were crying, screaming, or letting out the kind of laugh that makes people wonder if you need medical assistance. It wasn't the first time Christmas split me and my sister into archetypes. Last year, Amelia received a brand new MacBook for school, complete with a handwritten note that read, "To our future leader." I was handed a laminated to-do list written in Comic Sans instructing me to reorganize the garage. It was signed, "Thanks for being our little helper." I told myself I was used to it. I worked full-time in a kindergarten, a job my parents dismissed as glorified babysitting. On weekends, I used to add income by running children's parties, balloon animals, puppet shows, fairy wings. The clown job, my dad liked to call it, though I'd never dressed as a clown in my life. I had standards, and more importantly, I cared about children's feelings. But eventually, the parties faded, replaced by something far less optional, babysitting my niece Elodie free of charge nearly every weekend. My mom liked to remind me that it took a village. Apparently, in our family, I was the entire village. I remember staring at the book in my lap, the ridiculous cartoon on the cover smirking at me. I didn't cry. I didn't storm out or hurl the cocoa across the room. I simply smiled because that was my role, the cheerful, dependable one. Later, when my sister's store-bought cranberry sauce received more praise than the rosemary potatoes I'd labored over, I smiled again. When my mom handed me a trash bag and told me she admired how unproud I was about doing the little jobs, I smiled once more, though I felt my teeth grinding inside it. My dad praised Amelia for being practical, even though all she had done was open a can. I nearly choked on my potatoes. That night, in my tiny rented room above a nail salon, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My niece's laughter from earlier echoed in my chest. I had made her a reindeer puppet out of paper plates, and she had giggled so hard it sounded like music. That joy mattered more than any praise my parents had thrown at Amelia. But still, a sour weight pressed down on me. How was it possible to be 31 years old and still feel like a 10-year-old in my own family? I thought of the book again. They meant it as a jab, a cruel joke disguised as guidance. But maybe, just maybe, they were right, just not in the way they thought. Not grow up as in abandon glitter or children or magic, but grow up as in set boundaries, demand respect. Stop letting myself be used like a never-ending resource. So I got up, brushed glitter off the floor, and sat at my desk. My hands trembled, but steadied as I began drafting messages. The first was to Amelia. I told her gently but firmly that starting in the new year, I wouldn't be babysitting every weekend. I loved being an aunt, but I couldn't continue giving up all my time. I wished her well, encouraged her dreams, but told her I needed my own future too. The second message went to my parents. I thanked them for the book. I told them it made me think. I didn't say how it made me feel, because I didn't need to. The next morning, their calls began. 6 missed calls, 2 voicemails, a group text. We're surprised. This feels out of character. Please reconsider for the sake of the family. Out of character. That was their complaint. But hadn't my whole life been lived in character, playing the cheerful helper while Amelia got the spotlight? They had preached natural consequences when I was a kid. Now they could experience them. For once, I would not rush to soothe or rescue. For once, I would let silence answer. The first weekend of January arrived, and with it, the first real test of my newfound resolve. A message lit up the family group chat. Quick question, my mom typed breezily. Are you available to watch Elodie on Saturday? Amelia and Marcus have a dinner event. Won't take long. My stomach tightened, but I typed back, sorry, I've got plans. Within minutes, Amelia chimed in. Plans? Or one of your fairy parties? The words dripped with the same disdain she'd used since we were kids, the way she mocked me for owning 6 pairs of sparkly wings but no winter coat. My thumbs hovered over the screen. Then I replied simply, neither. Just unavailable. The silence that followed was louder than any insult. Saturday came, and instead of settling in with my niece, I walked through the zoo gates alone. I fed giraffes, ate overpriced cotton candy, and laughed until tears stung my eyes when a toddler hurled his sneaker into the meerkat exhibit and declared, "That's my offering." For the first time in years, nobody asked anything of me. Nobody accused me of being childish. Nobody told me to be a good girl. The entire day belonged to me. I didn't even post about it online. Some joy is best kept for yourself. On Monday morning, reality hit back. 3 missed calls from my dad, 1 voicemail from my mom. We're deeply hurt. My father's voice began brittle as glass. Apparently, Amelia had tried to hire a sitter when I declined. A teenager with a fake resume and a nose ring showed up, forgot to change Elodie's diaper for 5 hours, and let her eat whipped cream straight from the can. My parents were horrified not at Amelia for leaving her daughter with a stranger, but at me. Do you know how much stress Amelia is under? My mother said. She doesn't need this kind of betrayal. Betrayal. As if my refusal to babysit was treason against the state. I didn't respond. I just peeled a Paw Patrol sticker from my notebook and pressed it flat on the desk. Later that week, Amelia messaged me directly. Hey, just noticed my tuition deposit hasn't gone through. Are you behind? I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed, I'm not behind. I just stopped. She called instantly. You what? You can't just stop without warning. I'm in the middle of applying for a Geneva program. Her voice was sharp, incredulous. I held my phone steady. I'm not your sponsor, Amelia. I'm your sister. For one blessed second, there was silence. Then came the scoff. This is about the stupid book, isn't it? It would have been easy to blame the book. But the truth was bigger, heavier, older. The book was simply the last straw balanced atop a mountain of unpaid babysitting sarcastic remarks and years of being invisible. It's not about the book, I said quietly. It's about everything. It's about how none of you take me seriously unless I'm useful. How my job is a joke to you, but my free labor is sacred. How I've paid thousands to support your education and your travel, while you roll your eyes at mine like I'm some fairy tale dropout. There was a beat of silence. Then the classic Amelia shut down, cold and practiced. You're being dramatic. Grow up. I pressed my lips together. You're not entitled to my money, and you're not entitled to my time. I love Elodie, but I'm not your nanny. The line went dead. 2 days later, the battlefront shifted. My mom appeared at my school, unannounced, heels clicking down the hallway, scarf wrapped like armor. She found me cleaning up after a glittercraft explosion glue stick still in hand. Can we talk? She asked, tight smile plastered on her face. I stepped into the hall. Your sister's very upset, she began. She says you're being cold. And honestly, I agree. I know you enjoy this environment. Her eyes flicked over the crayon drawings on the wall. But maybe it's time to think about the bigger picture. You're not a teenager anymore. I looked down at the glue stick, then back at her. You know what's funny? Every day I tell my students that their feelings matter, that they deserve respect, that it's okay to say no. My mother blinked, caught off guard. I believe that, I added, even if I have sparkles on my pants while I say it. She tilted her head as if I'd spoken in another language. I'm not being cold, I said softly. I'm being clear. That's what growing up means, setting limits, protecting your peace, choosing how you want to live. Her eyes narrowed. So you're abandoning your family? No, I said, stepping back into my classroom. Just stepping out of unpaid servitude. The next few weeks were tense. Calls dwindled, messages slowed, the air thickened with unspoken disapproval. I knew what they were doing. They thought silence would bring me crawling back, desperate for reconciliation. They thought distance would punish me. But instead, distance felt like oxygen. I laughed more at work. Real laughter, the kind that shakes your whole body. A coworker spilled juice on her pants one morning and turned it into an impromptu water safety demo. We howled with laughter. One of my students told me I love you more than jelly beans, but not more than outer space. That joy, raw and unscripted, was worth more than any approval I'd ever begged from my parents. Then came Elodie's birthday. I didn't get an invitation. I found out through a Facebook post, Elodie in a bouncy castle cake, twice her size, Amelia and Marcus beaming in coordinated pastels. The caption stung like salt in a wound. Some families are born, others show up. I wasn't tagged. No one from my side of the family was. I stared at the screen for a long time, then closed it. The ache was real, but so was the clarity. The next day, I booked a small community hall. I pulled out boxes of costumes, decorations, and puppets. I messaged a few parents from work, called in favors, and the following weekend I threw Elodie a party. A wild, colorful, glitter-soaked celebration. Crowns and puppet shows, dragons and confetti storms. She hugged me so hard I nearly toppled. Best birthday ever, she whispered. No politics, no manipulation, no comparison. Just love. I thought the matter was closed. But a week later, Amelia received a 10-second voice note from Elodie's iPad. In the background, my niece's voice rang out, joyous and pure. Fairy party? Fairy party. No boring party. No boring cake? And then faintly, my laugh. That was all it took. The 10-second voice note detonated like a firecracker in a church. Amelia texted, first vague but sharp. She's confused. Keeps talking about your party like it was the real one. Not helpful. I ignored it. A day later, she added, Elodie keeps asking for you and calling our party boring. This is not okay. I nearly laughed. Was it treason for a child to prefer glitter and puppets over pastel balloons and expensive cake? But then the escalation began. One afternoon, my boss pulled me aside. Her voice laced with concern. I got a call, she said carefully. Someone asked if any children had ever been removed from class without authorization by a staff member. My stomach dropped. It was obvious who had made that call. The accusation was brutal in its implication that I had kidnapped my own niece. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the messages Amelia and I had exchanged before the party. Clear as daylight. Me just confirming for Saturday. Same drop-off time as last year. Amelia. Sure. Just keep it simple. No need to go overboard. Me. All clear to do it at the community hall. Amelia. Fine. Just text me the address. Proof time-stamped and undeniable. I opened a new folder on my laptop and labeled it Evidence. Inside, I saved every text, the rental receipt, Amelia's RSVP. Then I wrote an email. Hi, Amelia. Since I'm now hearing from others that you're suggesting I took Elodie without permission, I've attached a full record of your written consent. If this continues, or if my workplace receives another false inquiry, I will be consulting legal counsel. I love Elodie, but I will not tolerate being slandered for hosting a party you approved. I pressed send. My hands trembled, but my chest felt lighter. Amelia never replied. My mother did. This is family, not court, she scolded. You're being cold. Please talk it through. Cold. That was the word they always reached for. If I stayed calm, I was icy. If I cried, I was too sensitive. If I raised my voice, I was hysterical. There was no correct temperature for me to exist in. My father left a voicemail that ended with a chilling line. You know, we could have gone to the police. We chose not to. Think about that. I did think about it. I thought about it while sipping tea at midnight, the glow of my laptop casting shadows across stacks of glitter glue and construction paper. I thought about how easily they could distort love into threat, how quickly they could turn me from a helper into a suspect. Then I saved the voicemail into the evidence folder. The strange thing about being attacked is discovering who will defend you. A week later, my uncle, the one who once brought me cake for no reason, called. You matter more than they let on, he said gently. I saw your mom's post. Apparently, she had been vague booking hinting about misguided family members who treat children like toys. My uncle snorted. Ridiculous. Everyone's talking. Everyone knows it's nonsense. My cousin messaged me privately. I saw the photos. Elodie looked so happy. You're amazing with her. Even one of Amelia's friends reached out. I know it's not my place, but the way they've been talking about you, it's not okay. If you need someone to back you up, I'm here. It was a small message, but it felt enormous. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't the villain. Meanwhile, my work flourished. Parents who had seen photos from the fairy party began reaching out. We've had the bounce house, and the clown one said, but this felt like joy. Can we book you? Within 2 weeks, I had 3 new clients. I started sketching out bigger plans, creative workshops, storytelling sessions, maybe even a small business. Each booking, each delighted child, each grateful parent was another thread weaving a new identity. Not the family's invisible helper, but a professional in my own right. Still, the family war rumbled on. My mother cornered me one Sunday outside church. We miss how things were, she sighed. Your sister is under so much pressure. I met her eyes. And I'm not. Do you think raising 25 children in one classroom every day is easy? Do you think creating joy from scraps is worthless? She blinked, startled, but didn't answer. Instead, she repeated her favorite refrain. Please, for the sake of the family. For years, that phrase had been my leash. For the sake of the family, I babysat. For the sake of the family, I sent money. For the sake of the family, I smiled through humiliation. But that leash had snapped. For the sake of myself, I said, turning away. The silence from Amelia stretched for weeks. Then a letter arrived, handwritten in her looping script. I opened it with shaky hands. I overreacted, it read. I was scared. It hurt seeing Elodie so happy without me. You didn't do anything wrong. If you want distance, I get it. But if you ever want to see her again, I hope you'll let me know. I sat on my bed reading it twice. It wasn't an apology for the slander. It wasn't an admission of guilt. But it was something a crack in the wall she'd built around her pride. I wrote back, I love Elodie. I'll always be glad to see her. But I won't participate in a family dynamic that turns love into leverage. If we rebuild anything, it has to begin with honesty. I sealed the envelope, uncertain whether she'd reply. Weeks passed without a word. Then one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a video message. I opened it to see Elodie twirling in the tutu I'd given her, glitter swirling around her like stardust. She stopped mid-spin, looked into the camera, and waved. I love my fairy auntie, she declared. Tears pricked my eyes, but I didn't cry. I smiled. Because I no longer needed their permission to know who I was. 3 years passed, not with the drama of slammed doors or courtroom battles, but with the quiet erosion and rebuilding that only time can shape. Elodie grew from a chubby toddler into a 5-year-old with tangled curls, endless questions, and a fierce conviction that she was half unicorn. I saw her often, usually on weekends, sometimes at school events, sometimes just for ice cream and glitter crafts at my little apartment. Amelia tolerated it, not thrilled, but no longer hostile. The letter had been her last direct admission of guilt, but the truce it created held. We didn't discuss money travel or Geneva programs anymore. Instead, we talked about Elodie's preschool, her bedtime routines, her love for sticker books. We were not sisters in the old sense, but we were co-guardians of someone small and miraculous, and that was enough. My parents stayed at a distance. They sent polite texts on holidays, tagged me in family photos without commentary, and occasionally messaged me articles about resilience or the importance of family. They still didn't understand. They probably never would. They had never apologized, not truly, but somewhere along the way, I stopped waiting for it. Forgiveness didn't mean pretending the past had been different. It meant refusing to carry their blindness as my burden anymore. My life had grown too full for that weight, because in the silence left by my family's withdrawal, something else had bloomed. The little side gigs of birthday parties turned into a small business. I rented a studio with wide windows, the kind that made every fleck of glitter catch the light like a star. I called it Wonder Workshop. Parents booked months in advance. Schools invited me to lead Big Brave Feelings classes where children learned to name emotions with crowns, capes, and dragon puppets. My coworker Bree, who started part-time twisting balloons into phoenixes, became my full-time partner. We built something messy and glorious, rooted not in approval but in joy. And for the first time in my life, no one called it childish. They called it thriving. I still thought about that book sometimes. The cartoon woman with her juice box and glitter wand, the smug subtitle, the way my parents laughed when they gave it to me, certain they'd nailed my character in one joke. They had no idea. That book had been the spark not to abandon who I was, but to fight for it. Growing up didn't mean surrendering sparkles. It meant setting boundaries sharp enough to cut through manipulation. It meant refusing to let love become leverage. It meant realizing that kindness without limits becomes exploitation, but kindness with limits becomes power. One spring afternoon, Amelia invited me to coffee. She looked tired, older than her years, her ambition tempered by reality. I thought success would be easier, she admitted, stirring her drink with unnecessary force. Turns out, it's not. I studied her, this sister who had once been the golden child, the one with glossy resumes and passport stamps. She had stumbled now, working a job that didn't glitter, raising a child who demanded more than she'd ever expected. She wasn't cured of her pride, but she was softer. And for the first time, I felt something close to compassion. We had both been raised in the same lopsided house after all. She had been given praise, but saddled with impossible expectations. I had been given burdens, but denied recognition. Both of us had been wounded just differently. It's never easy, I said gently. but it doesn't have to be lonely. She nodded, not ready to say more, but it was enough. Yes, later washing dishes beside her, not because I had to, but because I chose to, she said quietly. I don't always recognize you. I smiled. I finally recognized myself. She nodded once the way people do when they understand just enough to move forward. That was enough. That night back in my studio, I opened the notebook and wrote a list of things I once thought were childish that turned out to be forms of faith. Balloons, puppet voices, saying no, choosing rest, believing that boundaries are a love language, believing that joy is serious work, believing that glitter swept into a dustpan is still a kind of star. The truth is, I had grown up, not into their version, but into mine. Not into a diplomat or a polished resume, but into someone who knew her worth, someone who could make children laugh and still demand respect, someone who no longer measured her life in her family's approval. And that was enough. More than enough. So, if you've ever been handed a cruel joke disguised as a gift, a book or a phrase or a backhanded comment meant to shrink, you know this. You don't have to keep reading it to yourself forever. You can set it down. You can pick up a pen, a wand, a glue stick, anything at all, and start writing a truer story. I did, and it saved me. If my story gave you courage to draw a boundary or reminded you that growing up doesn't mean giving up joy, then I'm glad. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment with your own stories. You never know who might need to hear them.